I tried to call you last night. I don't think you gave my number. I called by just to check in, but I still appreciate it. I'm ready.
Oh yeah, you tell me. You just pick where you want to.
I go right here,
Yep.
actually, right there. Michelle, good morning. Oh, yeah, hi.
Yep.
They're good. What's here? Quickly, you're a little busy.
Is this your stuff? This is my stuff. That's not my stuff.
How are you?
It was there.
Would you like to go here?
You want me to send it to Ed? Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, I'll meet you. Rob Thomas. Yeah.
Move me on. Yeah.
Is this
All right, hey guys, if you're not pressed, you gotta exit as well. Sorry, if you're not a press photographer, you gotta exit as well. Not you, I'm not.
I have to go there.
You can put that on the move.
What's your daughter's name? What's her name? She's so beautiful. How do you spell Mira? The mayor's compliment. That's the mayor's Mira. She's a girl. Okay. Yeah. I have a beautiful name. Last night. Did you say yes?
I figured you were.
I was with the state of the union. Did you arrive yesterday?
Morning, Mayor. Hey, Chelsea, good to see you.
I know you
How
are.
are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. All right, you got your spot, buddy.
Okay, we're actually back here. You know, just going.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. You what? Oh, right. Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh my God.
We good?
Sorry.
Where's the dog in here?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're gonna,
He's all right.
we're gonna, you all ready?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The hearing on the Committee of Oversight and Government Reform will come to order. Want to welcome everyone here today. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purpose of delivering an opening statement. Good morning and welcome to today's full committee hearing on sanctuary cities with the mayors of 4 American cities: Boston, New York, Chicago, and Denver. Over the past 4 years, the Biden administration created the worst border crisis in American history. The Democrats said that President Biden did not have the power or the money to stop the flow of illegal aliens at the southwest border. Turns out, the only thing President Biden did not have was the willpower. In a few short weeks, President Trump has proved what we all know to be true. The Biden administration could have stopped the crisis at any moment if only they had the courage to enforce the law. Since President Trump assumed office, illegal entries at the southwest border have plummeted, a 94% drop in 1 month, 94%. Under President Trump, the world knows that there are consequences for unlawful entry into the United States. The border crisis was not the result of climate change, a lack of resources, or a failure to grant amnesty. It was the result of the last administration's deliberate choice. President Biden enacted policy starting on the day he assumed office to allow millions of unvetted illegal aliens to pour into the United States. Many of these illegal aliens have long rap sheets that include violent crimes. President Trump has an electoral mandate from the American people to deliver on his promises to secure the border and enforce the immigration laws of the United States. And he is delivering on this promise big time. The mayors here today each lead so-called sanctuary cities. And let's be clear, these policies only create sanctuary for criminals. Sanctuary policies violate federal immigration law by protecting criminal aliens at the expense of the American people. Sanctuary cities and states refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement efforts and harbor illegal aliens. They often actively work to stand in the way of President Trump's mission to protect the American people and restore integrity to the American immigration system and the rule of law. Sanctuary cities forbid their officials, including those in law enforcement and public safety roles, from sharing information about illegal aliens in their cities with the federal government or turning over criminals in their custody to ICE. As a result, sanctuary cities release illegal aliens back onto the streets where they often go on to commit more crimes. In Chicago, for example, an illegal alien who was recently arrested for killing a 63-year-old man had previously been arrested in Chicago for trying to lure a child. ICE lodged a detainer against the criminal alien, but Chicago authorities released him back onto the street because of the city's reckless sanctuary policy. And now an innocent man is dead because of Chicago's refusal to follow the law. These reckless sanctuary policies also force federal immigration officers to go into local communities to apprehend criminal illegal aliens. If sanctuary cities were to simply communicate and work with federal immigration authorities, then federal agents could arrest criminal illegal aliens in a secure environment like a state or local jail. Instead, they have to risk their own safety and public safety by having to go into uncertain, dangerous circumstances just to make arrests. Sanctuary cities make us all less safe and are a public safety nightmare. That is why I launched an investigation into sanctuary cities and why these mayors are here today. We cannot let pro-criminal, alien policies and obstructionist sanctuary cities continue to endanger American communities and the safety of federal immigration enforcement officers. Today, Mayors Wu, Johnson, Johnston, and Adams will be publicly accountable for their failure to follow the law and protect the American people. President Trump and his administration are taking action against sanctuary cities, and Congress must follow, not by allowing a single penny of federal funding to go to cities and states that prioritize criminal aliens over the American people. I now yield to Ranking Member Conley for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every member here today, Democrats and Republicans alike, agrees that violent criminals don't belong in our communities. We all want our cities to be safe and have zero tolerance for violent crime, irrespective of the status of the perpetrator. Where we disagree is that my Republican colleagues prefer a selective application of the law to shield the President of the United States from accountability and this administration from the rule of law itself. In America, we uphold the rule of law, independent from partisan politics, without fear or favor. Betraying those convictions, President Trump's Department of Justice has tried to force the conditional dismissal of very serious charges against one of our witnesses here today, in exchange for that witness's total and complete submission to the radical immigration agenda being propounded by the administration. And the DOJ has done so over the objections of a Republican acting U.S. attorney whom President Trump appointed. Rather than enabling a flagrant corrupt and quid pro quo, 7 federal prosecutors, 7, including Republicans, resigned. One of them, a former clerk to Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court, said that anyone in his position, quote, would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials, in this way. History is calling on us now to stand up for those laws and traditions. Doing so also demands an affirmation of state and local sovereignty in determining the most effective ways to keep residents safe in compliance with federal law. To deny this sovereignty is an assault on the independence of every American city across the country. Today, Republicans have hauled before us the mayors of 4 major American cities to frame them as lawless because those cities have some limits on how intrusively and aggressively their own officials can conduct federal immigration operations and responsibilities. Let's be clear. The state and local laws that Republicans have issue with today are in full compliance with federal law. They do not obstruct ICE from carrying out its duties, and they are backed by evidence demonstrating that they keep people safe and safer in counties with laws that do not honor extrajudicial civil detainers and had significantly lower levels of violent crime than counties that had them. Mayors, police chiefs, sheriffs, and local leaders have made clear that the way to combat violent crime is allowing local police to do their local job of ensuring public safety in their own communities as they account for it. Commandeering them to spend limited time and resources as federal agents is a non-starter and can contribute to crime and non-cooperation in immigrant communities throughout the country. At this year's Conservative Political Action Conference, border czar Tom Homan said he is, quote, bringing hell to the city of Boston until it complies with his demands. I don't know what that means. Boston is my hometown, and I'm glad to welcome our mayor, Mayor Wu, and her 1-month-old baby here today. But I don't know that Boston welcomes Mr. Homan or anyone else bringing hell to the city. The Republican crusade against local independence doesn't just undermine public safety in our communities. It is blatantly cruel, and I say inhumane and un-American. Kenya Colindres, her husband Wilson Rogelio Velasquez Cruz, and their 3 children came to the United States in 2022 seeking asylum, a legal category of immigration, after escaping violence in Honduras. Wilson was granted a 5-year work permit, allowing him to work at a tire shop and to provide for his family here in the United States. Kenya said that her husband had never been in trouble and was, quote, a man of God. On January 26, the family of 5 was in church when Wilson was lured out by an ICE agent waiting to arrest him. Despite having valid work permits, the Trump administration refused to hear his appeal and is actively deporting him. Wilson was the sole breadwinner for his family. Now Kenya has to worry about how she's going to pay the bills and take care of her 3 children, on top of the fears that she and her children might be next. Last week in El Monte, California, Sitley, a woman who is battling bone cancer, tearfully watched as her mother, Yolanda, cried inconsolably as she was detained by ICE agents who refused to even present the detention order. Yolanda was Sitley's sole caretaker in her struggle against cancer and has no criminal record. And now Sitley is on her own. ICE is also conducting massive raids in cities and towns that have led to the wrongful detention of U.S. citizens, including Native Americans and military veterans. One school district sent a letter to parents warning that ICE may board school buses and demand documents from children. Children are going to be afraid to go to school. One reportedly wrote a goodbye note to friends saying, quote, if ICE takes me, don't forget about me. If ICE takes me, don't forget about me, from a child. Is that the country we want? America needs immigration policies that keep everyone safe and make the country stronger and allow us to grow and fill in the skill sets we don't have. If President Trump was serious about delivering those solutions, he would not be attacking the Constitution's guarantee of citizenship to children born in the United States. To see our country through this period of darkness, we need leaders who will stand up for the rule of law and will champion public safety at the local level. And American families, whether they're immigrant families or native-born families, deserve due process, deserve respect, and deserve that Statue of Liberty that welcomes all comers. I yield back.
Ranking member yields back. I request unanimous consent that Representatives LaHood of Illinois, LaLota of New York, Crank of Colorado, Malatakis of New York, Hurd of Colorado, Evans of Colorado, Van Dyne of Texas, Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Gillen of New York, and Davis of Illinois be waived onto today's hearing for the purpose of asking questions. Without objection, so ordered. And now, before we introduce the witnesses, I recognize Mr. Higgins from Louisiana for 20 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. Just to briefly, respectfully recognize the presence of the family of Wesley Haynes, a constituent. I'll speak to his case in my time, Mr. Chairman. But his parents, Patrick and Kathy, his wife, Olivia, his little brother, Brady, are present today, and they have a hard exit soon. Their 4-month-old daughter, Anne Marie, is waiting at home for Olivia to care for. And I just respectfully acknowledge their presence, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ranking Member. We will discuss the details of their case. They tragically lost Wesley Haynes last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to recognize this beautiful American family.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. I'm very pleased today to welcome our outstanding witness panel, the mayors of 4 major American cities. First, we have Mayor Eric Adams, who's a outstanding mayor of New York City. He was sworn into office on January 1st, 2022. We have Mayor Mike Johnson, who's the mayor of the city and county of Denver. He was sworn into office on July 17th, 2023. I now recognize Representative Krista Morte from Illinois for 1 minute to introduce our next witness.
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to introduce Brandon Johnson, mayor of the greatest city in the world, namely Chicago, a city that was built by generations of immigrants, people like my parents and myself. Mayor Johnson was raised in Elgin, Illinois, which I'm proud to represent in Congress. The mayor was one of 10 children born to Andrew and Wilma Jean Johnson. His parents inspired him to become a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools and then later to run for office. Mayor Johnson won his first race for Cook County Commissioner in 2018 and later became mayor of Chicago in 2023. Mayor Johnson has dedicated his life to public service, and I'm pleased to welcome my fellow Illinoisan to the United States House of Representatives and to the Oversight Committee. Welcome, Mayor.
I now recognize Representative Presley from Massachusetts for 1 minute to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm proud to introduce Mayor Michelle Wu, a dedicated leader committed to making Boston a welcoming home for everyone, and the first woman and person of color to be elected mayor of the city of Boston. For over a decade, I've had the privilege of working alongside Mayor Wu and witnessing her dedication to public service firsthand. She leads with compassion, she is innovative and inclusive. Under her leadership, Boston has become the safest major city in America, a city that is welcoming to families from all walks of life. Just weeks ago, she welcomed her newest family member, baby Mira, who is with us today, a beautiful reminder of the future she's working to build. Madam Mayor, I am grateful for your partnership, friendship, and leadership. Thank you for being here.
Gentlelady yields back. And finally, we're also joined by Mr. David Beer, who is the Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. Mr. Beer is the minority witness here today. I want to thank you all again for joining us, and I look forward to our discussion this afternoon. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you all. You may take a seat. We again appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Now, let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statement to 5 minutes, and we're going to limit our questions to 5 minutes, and that's going to be enforced today, and that's for both sides. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Mayor Adams for his opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Connolly, and members of the committee. As mayor of New York City and a former police officer for 22 years, keeping New Yorkers safe is my top priority, and it has been our administration's North Star. When I entered this role, my job was to help our city recover from the negative effects of COVID. Most importantly, to bring down crime. As a result, overall crime was down across New York City last year, and we have now had 3 straight months of double-digit declines in major crimes. I'm here today to testify on how New York City can continue to reduce crime, even as a sanctuary city. To be clear, a sanctuary city classification does not mean our city will ever be a safe haven for violent criminals. It also does not give New York City the authority to violate federal immigration laws. To the contrary, New York City will always comply with city, state, and federal laws as it does now. Law-abiding immigrants in New York have an important role. Immigrant New Yorkers, including those who are undocumented, pay billions of dollars in taxes and contribute billions more in spending power to our economy. Immigrants also play a vital role in the functioning of the city. This was on full display during the COVID-19 pandemic. The various immigrant residents of our city worked to keep the city moving, while many other New Yorkers were able to shelter in place and work remotely. Hospitals, the food industry, and many other businesses were able to function because of the commitment of our immigrant population. As mayor, I do not control who enters or remains in our country, but I do have to manage the population that is within our city. In order to carry out this function without having long-term negative ramification, I must create an atmosphere that allows every law-abiding resident, documented or not, to access vital services without fear of being turned over to federal authorities. I cannot have a city where parents are afraid to send their children to school or where children are sleeping on the streets, creating the potential for child exploitation and sex trafficking. If an undocumented person refuses to seek medical care until they have a medical emergency, our city's healthcare system will be strained. And if an undocumented individual witnesses a crime but is afraid to call 911 for fear of being turned over to federal authorities, criminals will roam free. And it reminds me of my early days as a police officer. I have seen firsthand the damage that can be done when someone is too afraid to seek out the police. Early in my career, I responded to a man who was calling out for help. We caught the suspect, but when it came to filling out the police report, the individual, an undocumented man from China, said he did not want to file a report and put a target on his back with federal immigration authorities. Approximately 4 decades later, our country still is in desperate need of comprehensive immigration reform. And as a result, New York City was hit with the largest humanitarian crisis in our city's history over the last 3 years. Federal law did not allow me to stop buses from entering New York City. State law required me to provide all in our city with housing and meals and to educate children. City law makes it unlawful to collaborate with ICE for civil enforcement. We complied with all of these legal requirements and still manage the humanitarian crisis with the care and compassion, while at the same time bringing down crime, recovering our economy, and preventing any child from being forced to sleep on the streets. Comprehensive immigration reform is long overdue. While the solution is not within my control as a mayor, I am committed to working with federal officials to go after violent gangs and those who harm residents of our city. This is why we have over 330 NYPD officers assigned to different federal joint task forces, over 70 of which are assigned to task forces with Homeland Security investigation, the criminal investigation arm of ICE. Those task forces focus on many different important priorities, including going after violent gangs and child exploitation. I look forward to sharing New York City collaborations that we do daily with our city, state, and federal partners to keep New York City continue to be the safest big city in America. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Denver Mayor Johnson for his opening statement.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for inviting me to testify today. This committee convened this hearing on the critical topic of immigration. I want to tell you Denver's story. When I became mayor 20 months ago, Denver was already receiving buses of immigrants with little to no notice or coordination. At one point, we were receiving 10 to 11 buses a day, dropping off as many as 300 people, mostly women and children, in 10-degree weather with only sandals and a t-shirt, leaving them in danger of freezing to death on our streets. All told, 42,000 people arrived in Denver over 18 months, the largest per capita influx of any city in America. We are each entitled to our own opinion about what should happen at the border, but that was not the question facing Denver. The question Denver faced was, what will you do with a mom and 2 kids dropped on the streets of our city with no warm clothes, no food, and no place to stay? As mayor, I have to protect the health and safety of everyone in our city. As a man of faith, I have a moral obligation to care for those in need. As scripture says, for I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. So that's what we did. In Denver, we believe our problems are solvable, and we are the ones to solve them. So we went to work. When we started, we had the largest encampment in Denver history, with more than 200 migrant families living in freezing temperatures. So we opened 8 different city shelters housing 5,000 people. City employees volunteered to take extra shifts, and Denver residents stepped up, making meals, donating clothes, furniture, school supplies. Some even welcomed families into their own homes. We helped 8,700 eligible individuals apply for work authorization so they could put food on their own table, pay their own rent, and reduce the strain on public resources. As a result, a year later, there is not a single migrant encampment left in the city. We have closed all of our shelters. We have connected people to jobs and housing, and the city's immigrant support budget has dropped by nearly 90%. And in the midst of this, migrants did not bring a wave of crime to Denver. In fact, crime went down. Homicides dropped 17%, shooting victims dropped 24%, auto theft down 29%. America is not just a place, it's a belief. Some people are born into it, some fight their whole life to get to it. It's a belief that all are created equal. It's a belief that it doesn't matter where you came from if you're willing to fight hard enough. Julian Becerra's parents believed that. So they brought him to this country from Mexico when he was 10. They taught him respect and they taught him to love and serve his community. As an adult, he decided the most honorable way to serve his community was in uniform. So he enlisted in the Air Force. Then he served as a sheriff, then finally as a police officer, where he served with distinction until one day he was pursuing a criminal on a dangerous bridge and fell to his death. In the midst of the immigration crisis, I attended the Fallen Officers Memorial as I watched officers hand Officer Becerra's 10-year-old daughter a folded American flag. I watched her cry as she wrapped her little arms around that flag and holded it tight the way she wished she could hold her dad, but never will again. For the rest of her life, she will cherish that flag, that American flag, because it is the country that her dad loved. It is the country he chose. It is the country he served. It is the country he gave his life for. So if we want to tell the story of what impact immigrants have in America, we must tell the full story. That story must acknowledge that this country is lucky to have people like Julian Becerra, who love this country enough to risk their lives to keep us safe, to keep all of us safe. When buses started showing up filled with migrants, some in my city were afraid, just like I'm sure some of your constituents are afraid. They were afraid about crime and homelessness and worried about what these new people might take away from them. I understand that fear. And the truth is, people who are new to this country do good and bad just like all of us. But there's another truth. When those buses kept on coming, Denver made a choice as a city, not to hate each other, but to help each other. Not to turn on each other, but to turn to each other. And see if together we could solve a problem that felt bigger than any one of us. And that's what we did. It wasn't perfect, and it required sacrifice from all of us. But in the end, Denver came out stronger and closer than we were before. Because Americans expect us to do more than point fingers. They expect us to solve problems. So if Denver can find a way to put aside our ideological differences long enough to manage a crisis we didn't choose or create, it seems only fair to ask that the body that is actually charged with solving this national problem, this Congress, can finally commit to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Chicago Mayor Johnson. For his
Thank
opening
you.
statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. Thank you to the ranking member Connolly and to the members of this committee. I have the great privilege and honor of serving as mayor of the city of Chicago, the third largest city in the nation. Established by a Black Haitian man and a Potawatomi woman, Chicago is and always has been a proud city of immigrants. Generations of new arrivals, including the descendants of the enslaved during the Great Migration, created a vibrant city where 1 in 5 residents is foreign-born. Each day, I wake up to serve every one of Chicago's 77 unique neighborhoods and those who live in our great city. As mayor of Chicago, nothing is more important to me than the safety and well-being of all residents. And since I was elected, my administration has been laser focused on creating and implementing public safety initiatives that protect all Chicagoans. We launched the People's Plan for Community Safety, which builds trust between communities and law enforcement by prioritizing transparency and violence intervention. We established a dedicated robbery task force that reduced robberies by 25% citywide. We added over 200 detectives, increasing the clearance rates on our cases. And we've updated police equipment and technology so that our police officers have the tools they need to effectively prevent and fight crime. Our efforts to improve public safety by building trust with and investing in our communities are working. Violent crime is down in Chicago. The city ended 2024 with its lowest homicide rate in 5 years. The city is also safer because of our Welcoming City Ordinance. That law makes sure that the city's police resources are focused on our local priorities. In fact, the 40 years The 40 years of Chicago's leaders have recognized that our policies toward civil immigration matters help to prevent and solve crimes. Put simply, any actions that amplify fears of deportations make Chicago more dangerous. Those fears cause witnesses and victims to avoid cooperating with police. The cooperation of all people, regardless of their